Have you ever wondered when to move on from something you're practicing? I certainly have, and a lot of my students have wondered the same, so I don't have the answer, sorry. But I do have a suggestion and an idea I want to present to you today that I hope will be helpful. And that's called the Pareto principle, or sometimes called the 80-20 rule. And that's something that came from an Italian sociologist and economist named Vilfredo Pareto in the late 1800s, early 1900s, developed around economics. But it's a really wonderful formula to keep in mind about a lot of things. Today, we're going to talk about it specifically when it comes to learning jazz solos by ear, memorizing solos, aka transcribing, though we are not talking about the official definition, the writing it down on paper. That's a separate topic. So learning solos by ear. So I was working with students at USC yesterday, and a couple of them are working on a Sonny Rollins solo, and one has been working on it for a number of weeks and really getting into the details, and that leads to the discussion today. So are you better off, is a student, myself, yourself, anybody, better off spending, let's say, 6 weeks on one solo and just nailing it to perfection, or learning 6 solos in 6 weeks? But only to 80% of each solo. Not necessarily length of the entire solo, but like just as a concept, like 80%. You're getting more than halfway there, the majority of it, but you're not like getting every last little. Again, there are no right or wrong answers here. These are just things to think about. Use what's valuable to you, leave the rest. So my concept here is that if we apply the 80-20 principle, which is, what does that mean for what we're talking about today? It means we want to identify the small portion of effort that produces the majority of musical growth. The small portion of effort, the 20%, that produces the majority, 80%, of musical growth. And to that end, if you had comparing somebody learning one solo over 6 weeks and somebody else learning 6 solos in 6 weeks, but only to 80%. What does that mean? It really comes down to leverage. So let's talk about it in terms of high leverage, low leverage, or high leverage, not high leverage. High leverage would be, this is the 80% that you want to focus on. I just want to clarify what I mean here is that these are 80% results that you might get from 20% of your effort. So let's say in 100% of the time, you might, in 20% of that time, you might get these results, the ones I'm about to talk about, that are high leverage. But then you might spend 4 times as much time to get what ultimately are the low leverage things, okay? Confused yet? Phrasing, time feel, articulation, vocabulary geometry, vocab geometry, I'll come back to that, harmonic logic, and let's say 3 to 5 lines that you can reuse. So this means not getting every last little thing. This is the not high leverage. Every little double time flourish, every ghosted inflection, every chorus. How necessary is that? What I'm basically getting at is I'm not advising to be lazy or to cut corners. I'm a big advocate of sweating the small stuff, and the details are so important. But at a certain point, and I've made some notes for myself, like exposure, this is what I wanted to say, exposure compounds faster than microscopic perfection. Exposure compounds faster than microscopic perfection. Again, it's not about cutting corners or being lazy, but early on in your development, I would argue that you're going to grow faster, especially if you're new to the process of transcribing, aka learning music by ear, which I've just, in 15 years running my online teaching studio, I've met I can't tell you how many adults for whom they've never really dealt with music that wasn't on the page. So that first leap into transcribing is a really big leap for them. And guess what? Once they do it and they start doing it more, guess what? It gets easier, right? It never gets like completely simple, but it gets easier. So early in your development, you'll grow faster getting 80% of 6 solos than 100% of 1. Later on, that last 20% becomes more important, getting those details, that really hard double time line. Look, I remember, I could tell you about a lot of different solos. One in particular stands out. It was a Chris Potter solo on Woody and You from the Red Rodney album, Then and Now. You can find it on YouTube, or maybe on Apple Music too. And he plays this brilliant solo on Woody and You. And early on, I could get a lot of it, but I had to skip the double time parts. They were just beyond my facility, beyond my understanding. I just skipped that part. I came back to it later. I mean, I tried. I got in there as much as I could. But at a certain point, you reach diminishing returns. And so I just left that, and I would come back to it later, and then it's like, oh, a year later, oh, wow, that part's not so difficult anymore. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here. That's what this high leverage part is. If you get 6 different people that you're transcribing in 6 weeks, and you're really working hard on it, you're exposing yourself 6 times as much to somebody's phrasing, time feel, articulation, vocabulary geometry. What does that mean? Vocab geometry. So yesterday we were working on this Sonny Rollins solo. Okay, fine, put the whole solo aside. Look at this on this 1 or 2 measures, the way he plays over G7 to C. For instance, oh, that's interesting. This line, whatever. Oh, if I understand it correctly, over G, he's playing B half diminished, B DFA, right? So you can start to have a conversation with yourself. So important. This is how you bridge that gap so that you're not just playing a thing you memorized, but you're actually you're harvesting information that you can reinterpret and reutilize yourself. You got to spend the time, juggling around mentally. What are they playing? I always like to say, what is it? What could it be? What else could it be? Meaning thinking, what is this person playing over this chord or these chord changes? What do I think it is? What else might it be? That's a really important practice, again, in my opinion, that helps us take it from just like lifting a solo to being something we can use, like the architecture of it, the blueprint, the scaffolding of that thing that we got from somebody. Now we have it in a way that we can understand it and reuse it. So then we were taking this 1 measure, 2 measures, and then we put it in another key and then another key. Not going up in half steps, like just playing it like a monkey, every half step until, we run out of time. But like logically thinking about it, maybe moving it up a minor third or go a fourth away or put it in a different context. Can I understand and mentally map what this person was doing? Oh yes, wow, now it got a lot easier. So that is a much different practice than just like trying to clock the whole darn solo. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm talking about here, high leverage. Whereas if I'm really concerned about just getting 100% of the solo, I might be going for some really low leverage parts that I don't want to say I'm wasting time or that you'd be wasting time, but we're really looking for the meat of the thing. And if you multiply this out, and again, you do this for 6 solos in 6 weeks. Like this month in the studio, we're doing a Dexter Gordon solo. Last month, we did a Charlie Parker solo and a melody. And like every month, we're doing one. The people who are participating in that, they're getting better because of the volume. Did I say this already? Yeah, the exposure compounds faster than the microscopic perfection. So get the phrasing, understand the harmony, like where can you use this thing? Some of these shapes, these geometric shapes. Hat tip to Joel Fromm. I remember he said this once, the geometry of jazz, and I love that. I love that concept. So get the phrasing, understand the harmony, steal 3 lines and understand them and move on. So just exposure, it's gonna compound faster. And then you can come back and revisit things. I'm a big advocate of this too. I remember coming back just a few years ago in COVID and everything and revisiting Sonny's Stitt on the Eternal Triangle. And I thought I knew that solo, and then I was revisiting it many years later. I'm like, oh wow, I thought he was playing all this time. I thought it was this, and now I'm discovering it's that. There's nothing wrong with that coming back, but so that's the 80-20 principle. Try to apply that to your practice. I have much more I could say about this. I don't know if this is interesting or not. I'd love if you leave a comment, let me know. But 6 weeks, 6 solos in 6 weeks versus 1 solo in 6 weeks, something to think about how you would approach that, what you would get out of that. And if you have to move on in a week, like what parts of this person's solo are you gonna get? And what are the most important takeaways? By the way, I have an album coming out tomorrow. By the time you're seeing this video, it's out already, but you can look it up. At some point, it'll be on my Bandcamp page, like the vinyl and the CD, but it should be out digitally streaming everywhere. It's Eddie Told Me So. It's in relationship to my fondness for the saxophonist, Eddie Harris. So anyway, 80-20 principle, Pareto principle, put it into practice. Let me know how it goes.